Locations in the comments as y'all coming in. Leah, thank you for the gift early on. As y'all coming in, put your locations in the comments. Locations in the comments. Hope everyone's having a great Thursday. Start to your Thursday. We will get started in a moment. Let's make sure we are active everywhere we need to be active. Put your locations in the comments as you all are entering. Shout yourselves out. I will shout a few of you out in a moment. Let's make sure everything is activated. We are live on Rumble. Good morning, Rumble. Live on YouTube. Good morning, YouTube. Let's see. I am live on X. For whatever reason, X doesn't have the live ring around my name. They usually put the ring there that says live. It doesn't say it, but I'm looking on X and I can see my live stream is active. So I don't know why it's in there. Let's see. Just got announced that this guy who plays for Miami Heat, Terry Rozier, got arrested as part of an FBI sports betting gambling probe. And Cash Patel is going to hold a press conference this morning to announce what that's about. So NBA player got arrested for gambling. Just heard that. So for whatever that's worth. We are live on X. Good morning, X. We are live on LinkedIn. Good morning, LinkedIn. Facebook is giving me trouble right now, but my Facebook page is Facebook/Work on Your Game University. So any of you who is a Facebook user, my page is still there. I don't know what's going on with Facebook right now. Facebook is giving me a little bit of a hiccup, but let me go back into Facebook, see if we can get this activated. We're live on Instagram at Dre Baldwin, live on TikTok at Work on Your Game. Let's see if it shows that I'm live on here. I guess not. Let me see. I might have to restart this one on Facebook. So we're going to try to restart it on Facebook. We are live on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is at Dre All Day. My YouTube is at Dre All Day. My Rumble and X are both at Dre All Day. My Facebook page is Facebook/Work on Your Game University. Again, Facebook users. TikTok is Work on Your Game. Let's see if we can get this Facebook page. Facebook Live active. 3, 2, 1. Says the video is starting. And it's supposedly starting. We'll see if it starts. If it doesn't start this time, I'm not going to do it again. All right, there it is. It is working. All right, so we are live on Facebook. Let me see if I can get this comment. Today's topic, let me make sure this comment is on here on Facebook the way it's supposed to be. Yes, it is. So we are active on Facebook now. Facebook/Work on Your Game University. LinkedIn is good. X is good. YouTube's good. Rumble is good. Instagram is good. And TikTok is good. Topic here today, Bernie Sanders. Our guy, Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is in the news. As usual, Bernie does a good job of keeping himself in the news, regardless of how you feel about Bernie Sanders. He does keep himself in the news. He has a new book out. Did y'all hear that Bernie Sanders has written a new book? Bernie Sanders has a new book called Fight Oligarchy. It came out, or Oligarchy. Oligarchy, tomato. The book came out yesterday. And here it is. He posted this on his X account, in which he has nearly 15 million followers. And he's trying to fight the oligarchy. As you can see, it's right there. Fight Oligarchy is Bernie Sanders' new book. And someone said, isn't Bernie Sanders a millionaire? Well, we'll see in a minute. But give me your locations in the comments Well, actually, we won't see. But let's first of all get clear on what an oligarchy is. It's a small group of people having control of a country, organization, or institution. I mean, technically, you can call that Congress. I mean, technically, you can say Congress and the president is a small group of people who have control over a country, organization, or institution. So there's an argument that Bernie's part of the oligarchy, regardless of how much money he has, because he's a member of Congress and he has been for a very long time. But we're going to get into all that in a minute. And we're going to look into Bernie Sanders' book and see what exactly he's talking about in this book. I don't think this is Bernie's first book. I think Bernie probably has a few books under his belt. So Bernie Sanders has written several books. We're going to get into all of this. Bernie Sanders actually has several books to his name that this will be fun. We're going to dive into Senator Bernie Sanders, the books that he has under his name, how many titles he has. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I see 7 by my count, at least the official account he has here on Amazon. But let me shout a few of you out before we get into talking about Senator Sanders, who is fighting the oligarchy, fighting a good fight, fighting the oligarchy to help us out, allegedly. Leah, good morning. Anastasia, thank you for joining through the invite that I share. I didn't know I shared an invite, but I'm glad you joined either way. Stephen Bateman, thank you for the gifts. Leah, thanks for the gifts. As usual, Dwayne Mitchell, Detroit's in the house. Congrats on the gifter badge. Carla, Indiana, good morning to you. Marky Mark from Sacramento, 140.6, Walnut Creek, California. Amy, AFF from Kentucky. Nikki from Connecticut. Jake Lancaster, God's Country, Iowa. Shout out to Iowa. That is one American state I have not been to. Angela, Rocky Mount, North Carolina, good morning. Al Johnson, Union, New Jersey. Says 46 degrees. So good luck to y'all in New Jersey. Who y'all voting for governor for New Jersey? I heard it's getting crazy up there. That election coming up. Stephen Bateman checking in from Louisiana. D. Peasy from Austin, Texas. Chris 2.0 from Suffolk, VA. Murphy the Mutt from Tennessee. I've been to all these places. Rick Thomas, Ellington, Florida. Shout out to Ellington. Shout out to Tampa Bay. Quail Ridge, Lincoln, California. K.S. Priest, Northwest Georgia. Leah from South Georgia. I've been to all these other states I'm shouting out. Anastasia, South Carolina. Irma V, thank you for the pumpkin times 50. Northern and Pearls, good morning. Bless Mama said, isn't Bernie a millionaire? I don't know if he's a millionaire. I think Bernie would probably deny he's a millionaire, or he would filibuster the question if you ask him directly if he was a millionaire, and he would refocus your energy. He would refocus your attention on the oligarchs, of which I don't think he considers himself to be one, because he wouldn't be fighting against himself. But we're going to dive into that a little bit here today. Leather and Pearls, thank you for the Go Popular. Big Shot from Connecticut. Have I been to Connecticut? I'm not sure I've been to Connecticut. I think that's another state I haven't been to. Bless Mama from Texas. Didi, thanks for the follow. So, topic here today, Bernie Sanders has a new book out. C. Collins checking in from Newburgh, New York. Good morning. This new book is called Fight Oligarchy. It has 10 reviews on Amazon already, and they are all 5-star reviews. So let's take a look at the reviews from Bernie Sanders' book, because this is what we're talking about here today. Now, nice enough by Bernie is that the book is only $9.99 on Kindle. So if you want to buy the book, it's only $9.99. And the book is about, according to Amazon, Bernie Sanders examines how wealthy oligarchs control America's politics and economy while offering solutions to restore democratic power to ordinary citizens. Then there's the audio version of the book. Of course, you can get on Audible, and you can get the paperback of Bernie's book right now for just $14.99. Now, the book is only 160 pages. Crown is the publisher. Came out October 21st, 2 days ago. And he printed it in 4x6. This is a little book you can fit in your pocket. And what Bernie says about his book, should I read this whole thing? There's a lot. It's actually not that much. Let me read the quote from Bernie Sanders, what he says about his own book. Quote, oligarchy is a system in which a small number of extremely wealthy individuals control the economic, political, and media life of a nation. It is a system in which ordinary people have very little power to determine the future of their country. If you're an American, it is the system in which you're living. That must change. In the wealthiest nation on earth, we must build a political movement that creates a government that represents all Americans, not just a handful of billionaires, close quote. That is from Bernie Sanders. Now, what it says about the book is Senator Bernie Sanders breaks down the unprecedented crises we face today in Trump's America as Trump undermines democracy at every turn and how we can effectively fight back. Now, see, I get the first paragraph or the quote by Bernie Sanders. I actually get the quote. I understand what he's doing. This is his business. His game is I'm fighting the oligarchy, and there's all these people with all this money that are controlling everything. And here I am fighting the good fight for you. as a senator in the United States, as a member of Congress. I'm trying to fight the good fight to help you out, and I don't think it's right that a bunch of people with a bunch of money are controlling a bunch of things. There's a bunch of people who actually think that too. So he's not crazy necessarily to say that. It's part of his hustle. It's part of his grind. What any of you, some may call this a grift. This is what Bernie Sanders is doing. I don't like using the word grift because people just throw that around when they hear something that they don't like. This is his hustle. It's his game. I get it. Now, this next paragraph, this is not a quote of his, but this is the description of the book, saying the crises we face in Trump's America as Trump undermines democracy at every turn. See, that right there, Bernie, come on. He didn't have to put that in there. I think he could have left that part out. Now, let's see what else it says. From the moment that Sanders began his fighting oligarchy tour in the early days of the Trump administration, and it's been longer than that, Bernie Sanders has been fighting oligarchy since the 1990s, by the way, and we're going to prove it. Since he began his tour in the early days of the Trump administration, why he's on tour to fight oligarchy instead of actually doing his job as a senator is a different story, or maybe he thinks it's a part of his job. Clearly he does. It was clear that his message resonated with Americans across the political spectrum. Well, some of them, yes. Record-breaking crowds, numbering in the tens of thousands, showed up across the country. Well, what records did he break? I don't think he broke any records. What record? Is there a standing record for how many people show up to hear a speech about oligarchy? If so, is only his record and he broke his own record? No, what record did he break? That's a tricky language they use there. But okay, we'll let it go. Large numbers of Americans in red states and blue states were prepared to stand up and fight back. All that means is that there are Democrats in every state. That doesn't prove anything. In his book, he shows how we can continue that fight. Of course he does. Now, what else he says? In a series of short, pointed chapters, Sanders explains how the United States today is an oligarchic society, in which a small handful of multi-billionaires exercise enormous economic and political power. Do I believe that there's a bunch of multi-billionaires with a whole bunch of enormous economic and political power? Yes, I do. Now, if that is what we call an oligarchy, maybe. And does that mean that they are controlling everything, the people don't have power and they need to be fought against? I'm not so sure about that last one, but we'll get into that. Now, he describes what it means when the very rich get much richer, while the majority of Americans struggle to pay rent and put food on the table. We're going to address that shortly. And how he observes how a corrupt campaign finance system allows billionaires in both parties to increasingly control our political system. So he should be talking about himself because he's been in politics for, again, 30 to 40 years. So how has he been able to do it? Is he just that great of a politician? I mean, what has he achieved? He's been fighting oligarchy for 35 years. He hasn't succeeded in fighting oligarchy, but he keeps getting elected. So he should be talking about himself, though I doubt he does. Now, Sanders also discusses how, under Trump, we are rapidly moving towards authoritarianism with a president who is undermining our democracy as he attacks Congress, the courts, the media, and law firms and universities in search of more and more power for himself. Let me read that sentence again. It's a long sentence. Sanders discusses how, under Trump, we are moving toward authoritarianism with a president, that's Trump. This is what he says Trump is doing. He's undermining our democracy as he attacks Congress. How can the president attack Congress? I mean, the system of checks and balances is that they balance each other out. So he can't really attack Congress. He attacks the courts. Again, he can't really attack the court. The only way you attack the court is by going to court with a lawyer and you get judged by a jury of your peers and or by a judge. You can't really attack the court. The media, you can attack the media, but the media attacks him. I think we can agree. And law firms. Again, how can you attack a law firm? What is he even talking about? And universities. Trump is attacking universities. How is he attacking universities? But this stuff just kind of passes through people's subconscious without even actually looking at what exactly is he saying here. And he's in search of more and more power for himself. This has been the common theme of all the Democrats going against Donald Trump for 10 years. That he's just trying to get more and more power for himself. We'll get to that. We'll come back to that. With relentless optimism and focused energy, this is Sanders talking about himself now. Sanders reminds readers that the true power rests with the people, and he presents a path forward to a reinvigorated democracy. So this is what Bernie Sanders all says about himself. Now, Bernie Sanders ran as a Democratic candidate for president of the United States in 2015, 2016. He served as mayor of Burlington, Vermont's largest city. Burlington was Vermont's largest city for 8 years before defeating an incumbent Republican to become the sole congressperson for the state in the U.S. House of Representatives in 1991. 1991, ladies and gentlemen. That's when he came to D.C. He was elected to the Senate in 2007, so he's been there for almost 20 years and is now in his second term, making him the longest-serving independent in the history of Congress. He lives in Burlington, Vermont with his wife, Jane, and has 4 children and 7 grandchildren. All right, so what a great grandfather Bernie Sanders must be. So I want to see what the reviews are so far on this book. So the reviews are all 5 stars. So clearly his fans are reading it. 4.8 out of 5, 10 global ratings. Not much to go off of with that so far. But let me give a little bit more background as to what we're talking about here today with Senator Sanders. He is the longest serving independent in congressional history, a 2-time Democratic presidential contender. So as soon as Bernie flew that Democratic flag, it was clear what side he's on, even though he claims to be independent. And you can see from the description of his book, as I just read. In description of his book, he's saying, oh, Donald Trump's America. So Donald Trump's America. So when America's doing great, is the America of the person you like. And when America's doing bad, or at least you think is doing bad, or you want to frame it as doing bad, is the America of the person who you don't like. Now, all y'all catch that? Right? Just pay attention to the language that these politicians use and their paid influencers. They all use this language. So if you pay attention, you'll start noticing it. So Donald Trump's America when it's bad. So obviously this guy's on the Democratic side. Now, he's in the spotlight with this new book. Again, it's called Fight Oligarchy. It claims that America has evolved into an oligarchic regime, which I already explained, and is outsized control that billionaires hold over politics and the economy. Outsized is a relative term. Now, already this year, he went on this tour, Fighting Oligarchy, and it drew massive crowds in both red and blue states, or whatever you consider to be massive. Yet as he lambastes corporate power and wealth accumulation, many critics, that's some of you, note that, first of all, he's selling a book. Now, technically, I don't think there's anything wrong with selling a book. You write a book, you're offering people something of value, at least they think is of value. They should be willing to exchange money for your product or your service. I don't knock Bernie Sanders for selling a book, even though his whole frame is fighting oligarchy. And at the same time, I understand why people will bash him for selling a book, because his whole frame is fighting oligarchy. His whole frame is people who are doing things to make a bunch of money, i.e. capitalists, they're doing something wrong. And Bernie Sanders clearly presents himself as a socialist. Can we agree that Bernie Sanders is a socialist? Is that how we see things? Bernie Sanders appears to be a socialist. He appears to be against the concept of capitalism. And capitalism is all about rewarding the producers. So Bernie Sanders has produced a book. So my question is Bernie Sanders a socialist? I'm asking. That's my question to the audience. Give me a yes or a no. Is Bernie Sanders a socialist? Because we know his granddaughter, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is clearly a socialist. And their second cousin, once removed, Zohran Mamdani, he is about to become the mayor of New York City. And good luck, New York. We'll talk about that if and when it happens. Their election's coming up. Hopefully, I think their election is going to be on a Tuesday, and I might be away on that Wednesday the next day. But if I'm away, I'll be talking about it when I come back, whenever that is. But anyway, I don't knock somebody for selling a book. You make a book, you sell it, you should get money for it. I don't knock the concept. But because the way Bernie has positioned himself, I don't mind people bashing him for selling his book. I don't mind them bashing him for doing this. So many critics say, first of all, you're selling a book. You're touring at elite expense. We know that Bernie and AOC are flying first class and flying private while they're on their tour to fight oligarchy, which again, Bernie, I don't knock Bernie Sanders for flying first class. If you can afford to fly first class, fly first class. Any of you who flies, you've never flown first class, I suggest that you try it once in a while or once just to see how it is. And you probably won't want to ever fly coach again after you do it. So I don't knock Bernie Sanders for flying first class if you can afford to fly first class. If you can afford to fly private and you do it, then fly private. But at the same time, Bernie, you have positioned yourself as these people who make money and they do things to make money and they are executing through a capitalistic system. They are bad because they're trying to do things to make money. And then you do things that show you have and or are trying to make money. You're going to get bashed for that because it looks hypocritical on the surface. The optics of it make you look hypocritical, even though logically there's nothing wrong with it. The optics of it make him look hypocritical. And I don't mind people bashing him for it because Bernie Sanders will get hyperbolic to make other people look bad based on money, basically, is what his whole thing is about. People with a bunch of money are the bad guys. That's his frame. That's Bernie Sanders' frame. You got a bunch of money, you're a bad guy. So you doing anything to make money or doing something that shows that you have access to money or that you have money, you look like a hypocrite. So I don't mind people bashing him for that, even though, again, logically, I can understand what he's doing. So this is all the game that he decided to get in. So he's selling a book, he's touring at elite expense, and he's remaining in office despite decades of promising this change of fighting the oligarchy. And he has failed for 34 years. He came into D.C. in 1991. Is that 34 years? Is my math right? 34 years he's been in D.C. He has failed to defeat the oligarchy. He's been fighting. So Bernie Sanders is a hell of a fighter. He keeps getting hit with left hooks and uppercuts to the jaw, yet he keeps fighting and losing, and he's still here. Now, this raised the question of whether his crusade is deeply rooted or simply another political brand extension. I think this is a political brand extension, clearly. I do think that Bernie believes the things that he says, while at the same time, I think this is his hustle. I think he doesn't have anything better to do. I don't think he has any other way of contributing at the same level societally, aside from being in politics and doing what he's doing. And again, I'm not knocking his hustle. I'm just criticizing his hustle. Knocking it would mean I'm trying to stop him from doing it. I'm offering a criticism of him because he puts it out there in the public. You put something out in the public, you can be criticized. That's the way it works. Same reason why I say I welcome the detractors who come into the comments when I'm doing these live streams. So let's get into talking about Mr. Bernie Sanders and what we're going to do here. I'm going to pull up the montage. This was discussed a while ago. We're going to pull it up again. The Bernie Sanders montage of him fighting the oligarchy. I'll show you in a second. But before we do that, let me introduce myself. For those who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day, former 9-year pro athlete, author of a few books, done a few TED Talks, and run this company called Work on Your Game Incorporated. Our job here is to help you sell without selling, how to close deals without persuading, how to get your way without having to push, having the confidence and the discipline and the energy, what we condense this into one term called presence, that creates command of the room, makes people notice you, feel you, and remember you, even if you don't say a word. This is how you make sales. This is how you win friends and influence people. This is how you get remembered. This is how you get noticed. This is how you get listened to. So all the things tangibly and consciously that you're trying to get done in your career, in your life, and in your business, it starts with the unconscious conversation, the unspoken conversation that happens instantly as soon as you walk into a room. We help you master that so that everything else becomes 10 times easier. You want to learn more about that, go to the link in my profile. It's powerpresenceprotocol.com, or you can see it in the pinned comment on whatever app you're watching on right now, between Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, X, TikTok, LinkedIn, and one that I didn't mention, Facebook. All that said, let's get into Bernie Sanders. Here is Bernie Sanders back in let's see. This great country of ours is moving very rapidly in the direction of oligarchy. The United States of America. All right, so we're starting in 1993, ladies and gentlemen. So these are all different clips of Bernie Sanders talking. I'm going to note the year when you just listen to his voice. This is Bernie, and every one of these clips is a 1-minute video. We're going to listen to Bernie Sanders talk, and I'm going to tell you every year that he said this thing. Listen. This great country of ours is moving very 1993 rapidly in the direction of oligarchy. 93. The United States of America today is increasingly becoming an oligarchy. More and more moving 1995. We are moving in the direction of oligarchy. 2007. We will move even more rapidly 2012. In the direction of an oligarchy. This great country 2014 is evolving into an oligarchic society. It is called oligarchy, and that 2015. Is the system we are rapidly moving toward. This is a budget that moves 2017 rapidly into the direction of oligarchy. A handful of billionaires 2018 moving this entire planet toward an oligarchic society. Start off with the bad news, which is pretty bad. 2025. And that is that under Donald Trump, this country is hurtling rapidly toward oligarchy. This great country. So Bernie Sanders, ladies and gentlemen, Bernie Sanders has been telling everybody that we're moving towards oligarchy. He first said it, at least it's first cited in this video that I just showed you, 1 minute, or let you hear, 1 minute video, 1993. Who was the president in 1993? I believe that was William Clinton from the great state of Arkansas. Am I correct on that? Somebody fact check me. I believe that was Bill Clinton in 1993 was the president. So that was a Democratic presidency. He said it again in 94, Bill Clinton. Then he said it again in 95, Bill Clinton. Then he said it again in 2007. 2007, the president was George W. Bush. Then he said it again in 2012. Who was the president then? That was Barack Hussein Obama. Then he said it in 2014. Who was the president then? Barack Obama. He said it in 2015, Barack Obama. 2017, Donald Trump. 2018, Donald Trump. Then he was saying it during the Biden regime. We don't have a clip of that. Now he's saying it again in 2025 and trying to blame it on Trump. So here we already proved that Bernie Sanders is a hypocrite. It's already proven that he's a hypocrite, because in his book description on Amazon, he is saying that, let me go read it straight from his book description. Trump undermines democracy at every turn, and we want to fight back about the unprecedented crises we face in Trump's America, which is all based on oligarchy. The whole book is titled Fight Oligarchy. So the premise of his book, Fighting Oligarchy, is that Trump's America has made this worse, and that is the unspoken reason why he had to write the book right now, because Trump's America is making things worse, while at the same time, in 1993, 1994, 1995, 2012, 2014, 2015, all during Democratic administrations, he was saying the exact same thing. Now, all of a sudden, it's Trump's America. That's the problem. So we already caught Bernie Sanders in some bullshit. All right, so Bernie Sanders is a typical politician, all right, using the temperature of the room and the direction of the wind to say, okay, well, everybody's bashing Trump. Let me find a way to bash Trump and fold it into my thing, my shtick, which is fighting oligarchy, which I've been fighting since, again, according to this video, 1993. He's been fighting oligarchy since 1993. If my math is right, that is 32 years. He came into D.C. in 1991. So let's just say he didn't mention oligarchy until 1993. 32 years. This guy has been fighting oligarchy. 32 years. And he hasn't succeeded. He said we're moving towards oligarchy. In many of these videos, he said we're going closer and closer and closer to oligarchy. And he hasn't been able to stop it. He's been warning. Nobody's been listening. So he's a boy who cried wolf, and nobody's ran to come help save him from the wolf. It means he should have got eaten by the wolf in 1993. Right, why didn't the wolf eat him? Is the wolf just not? The wolf is just satisfied. The wolf doesn't need any food. Why hasn't the wolf eaten Bernie Sanders yet? Because he keeps crying wolf, and nobody's listening. Nobody's coming to help him. Yet he's still allowed to keep saying it. All right, something's missing here. Somebody's lying. All right, somebody's lying. That's the conclusion that I'm drawing. I'm putting on my Candace Owens. This is Candace Owens' voice right now. Somebody is lying. Something ain't true right now, because he's been saying that the oligarchy is coming. He's been warning everybody who will listen that the oligarchy is coming for 32 years. And he's kept saying it, kept saying it, kept saying it. He's still around. He's still saying it. He keeps getting reelected while he continues to say it. Nobody has jumped in to help him stop the oligarchy. The oligarchy is only getting worse. The oligarchy hasn't been stopped, yet nobody votes him out of office, and they keep listening to him. He's on tour with quote-unquote record-breaking crowds, and he's selling books. And the people are still buying the story, yet nothing is changing. Somebody's lying. Somebody's lying. Now, where's Candace Owens when you need her? All right, there's a lie happening here. I need to figure out what the lie is. And if I had to put my money on what the lie is without any other information, I'm going to bet the liar is the politician. That's just my default. My default frame is that if there's a lie happening and a politician is involved, that the politician is probably a liar. They're probably the one propagating a lie, creating a lie, pushing a lie. And Bernie Sanders is a career politician. He hasn't done anything else of value for society besides be a politician. He's probably lying. I'm going to conclude Bernie Sanders is a liar, and now we're going to work backwards. We're going to deconstruct from my conclusion that Bernie's lying based on the frame that I've already given you and figure out why he's lying, what exactly is the lie, and why people keep buying it. And these actually, the answers to these questions are actually pretty easy. I give you these answers pretty easily. I've given them to you before, but I'll give them to you again here today. Now, Bernie Sanders is framing himself, positioning himself as he's breaking with the status quo by directly challenging billionaires across party lines. All right, this is a nonsense frame. What billionaire? What billionaire is there in politics? Besides Donald Trump, who's noted as a billionaire, besides him, who is he talking about? There's no other billionaire there. So I don't know what he's talking about, directly challenging billionaires across party lines. No, he's not. What he is doing is getting the average American citizen, and there are many more average American citizens than there are above average American citizens. So this is the masses. Bernie Sanders is getting the masses of people together and saying, hey, masses of people, things aren't going good for you right now, are they? And the masses of people are saying, Bernie, no, things are not going good for us. And then he's saying, well, you know why things are not going good for you? And the masses say, why, Bernie? And Bernie says, because these few people, there's a lot more of you than there are them. These few people, they are a lot more successful financially. They have a lot more financial resources. They can do whatever they want financially. You can barely get by financially. And y'all see that difference, right? And the masses say, yes, we do see that difference, Bernie. What does that mean? And Bernie says, well, that means these guys are the bad guys because they have all the stuff. And you are the good guys because y'all don't have anything. They're the ones who are employing you. They're the ones controlling everything. Look at all the things they control. Look at all the stuff that they have. Look at all the stuff that they can do. Look at all the resources that they have. Look how they can donate to political campaigns and have control over things, and how Jeff Bezos had $100 million wedding, and this person can do this, and Mark Zuckerberg is building a bunker, and Elon Musk is trying to send rockets into space, and he buys X and helps control the election and helps influence Donald Trump winning the election. Look at all the power that these people with the money have. There's only a handful of them. There are hundreds of millions of you. Obviously, they're the bad guys, and you all are the good guys. And I think I can solve this problem. And the masses say, okay, you have our attention. How do we solve the problem? He says, okay, what we're going to do is fight oligarchy, because look at this situation. 5 years ago, it was like this. Now it's gotten worse. These terrible people have gotten more rich. You have gotten more poor, and the situation is only getting worse. You don't see a way that you're going to become more rich. They get richer and richer every day. You're getting poorer and poorer every day as the value of your dollar goes down, while because the government and the Federal Reserve, which is not federal, not reserve, doesn't have any reserves, is not actually a bank. They keep printing money and lowering the value of your dollar. He doesn't say that part. They keep printing money and lowering the value of your dollar. So you're getting poorer every day based on wages. They're getting richer every day based on ownership and investments. They must be bad guys. You must be the good guys. Listen to me, and I will tell you how we fight the oligarchy. And the average masses of people say, well, that sounds like a good idea. I ain't got a better idea. Might as well follow what Bernie says. This is the reason why Bernie can go on tour and have quote unquote record breaking crowds and sell books on oligarchy. He can teach his concepts to his granddaughter, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and they can hand their concepts over to their cousin, Zoran Mamdani. And that's why you have more and more Americans buying into this concept of socialism outwardly and overtly. Why? Because the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Does everybody understand that explanation? Now, here's the reason why this works. I'm going to tell you why this works and why Bernie Sanders is not a dumb guy. I don't agree with Bernie Sanders' approach, but I understand his approach and I can appreciate his hustle, as I've said a couple times here today. I understand and I appreciate his hustle. The reason why I appreciate his hustle is because the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. All of you have heard that phrase before. That's a real thing. What I want to explain to you is why it's a real thing. Rich getting richer and poor getting poorer is not political, and it's not really about money either. Money can be part of it, but that's not really what it's about. It's about human nature. And human nature is based in, well, it's based in several things, but let's go to science here. All right, I'm going to put my Dr. Fauci hat on right now. All right, trust the science. Science says there's a law in science called the law of inertia. Some of you have heard of the law of inertia, I-N-E-R-T-I-A, inertia. The law of inertia states that an object in motion shall remain in motion, or an object not in motion shall remain not in motion until or unless acted upon by an outside force. Now, to put that in very simple terms, one side of inertia is called momentum. Everybody knows what momentum means, right? If you're moving and you don't do anything to stop the movement, it just keeps going. And the other side of the coin is called stagnation. If you have nothing going on and you do nothing to change the situation, you pretty much stay doing nothing. Everybody's heard of momentum and stagnation. Momentum and stagnation are colloquial terms that are used to describe the scientific phenomenon known as inertia. This is science, and this is true science. So this is not Dr. Fauci science. This is real science. Meaning, when you hear the saying, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, all it is telling you is different sides of the law of inertia, momentum and stagnation, i.e., people who have a lot of money, there's a certain way that they think and a certain way that they behave that put them in a position of having a lot of money. So they keep doing those things, thinking that way, and they get more of the same outcome, i.e. the rich get richer. The rich get more money because the things they did to become rich, they just keep doing them and they get more and more rich. And on the flip side, the people who don't have a lot of money, the people who consider themselves poor, broke, struggling, whatever term you decide to use, they did certain things, or they think a certain way, or they don't do certain things, or don't think a certain way that put them into that position. And because they don't do anything to change that situation, all that happens is that same situation exacerbates itself and they get more and more into the same circumstance that they're already in. So the rich get more rich, the poor get more poor. Now, to be clear, poor is a state of mind, is not a financial situation. Broke is a financial situation. You can be broke with a rich mindset. So you want an example of that, look at somebody like Donald Trump. Donald Trump at a time was more than broke. He was actually in debt. Donald Trump was billions of dollars in debt. He wrote about this in one of his books. He said, I walked past a homeless person on the street in New York City, and I figured that guy is $6 billion richer than me because he's at zero and I'm at negative $6 billion. He was broke, more than broke. But because he had a mindset of a rich man, he was able to get back to being rich again. And here he is to this day because his mindset overcame his financial situation. The problem with the poor, and these are the people that Bernie Sanders is really preaching to, are poor people. They may not always call themselves poor, but their mindsets are poor because they're buying into the bullshit that Bernie is saying. The fact that you're even buying into what Bernie says proves that you have a poor mindset when it comes to money. And I'm going to explain all this. I'm going to make sure all of you understand this very well. He's preaching to them and they buy into his story because, number one, Bernie is selling you the idea that your situation is not because of you, is because of somebody who has a lot more than you. That's the first piece of nonsense that he's preaching that you bought. That's the first piece of bullshit that you bought. The second one is that I'm a politician, and as a politician here in the United States of America, if you just follow me and listen to me and keep voting for me, I'm going to solve your problem. That's the second piece of bullshit that he sold you. The third one is that your situation, however your situation occurred, is not your fault. This is what, in marketing, this is always the job of marketers. You have to sell people that their current situation is not their fault and they're not the reason that they're in it. They just need to do this new thing and it's going to solve their problem. It's not your fault that you have a beer belly. All you got to do is buy this machine, this contraption that goes around your waist, and you push a button and it activates your abs and then you're going to have a six-pack in 6 months. That is some bullshit. But it works and it sells. Why? Because it sells people on the concept of getting something for nothing, which most people logically understand is not real. It actually violates one of the laws of economics and violates one of the laws of physics. But people buy into it because most human beings are lazy. They don't read and they don't think. And Bernie Sanders, as a politician, a seasoned politician, he's smart enough to understand this. So he says, let me just take advantage of this instead of telling people the truth. So any of you want to know why I do not work in politics is because I have this bad habit of telling people what's actually true. And I would never succeed in politics by doing this. See, if I want to succeed in politics, I got to be more like Bernie. I got to tell you some bullshit that you want to believe that makes you feel good. And then I'll sell you on more of the bullshit by making you vote for me. And that's how I maintain my career. Number one, I stay in politics. You get to feel good because you get to depend on me solving your problem. And anytime you start to question what I've told you, all you got to do is come to one of my rallies or listen to me on CNN or read my new book. And I'm going to reinforce the same idea that got you into the loser position that you were in the first place. This is how politics works, generally speaking. As a general rule, this is how politics works. If you look around at politicians who've been around for a long time, notice that they all do this. They just have different things that they talk about. So Bernie Sanders, his whole thing is the reason you don't have money is because a bunch of people who do have money. Again, which logically makes no sense. But there's a whole bunch of people who want to believe it. Why? Because if you believe that coming from a politician, then guess what you don't have to do? Take ownership or responsibility over your own situation. And anybody who gets good at preaching to people that you're not responsible for your situation, let me fix it, you're going to get a whole lot of support because the average person, which that makes up most people, 90% of people are average in terms of the way that they think, let alone other things. They're going to buy into this because you're absolving them of responsibility. Here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the problem with that. The problem with allowing someone to absolve you of responsibility is that responsibility is a package deal. The package deal of responsibility is that it also comes with power. Most people, if you ask them, do you want power? Power meaning not power over others, but power meaning power over your outcomes, over your circumstance, the way you live, what you get to do, what you don't have to do, etc. Most people want power at least over themselves. The problem is when you give up responsibility to a politician who's going to quote unquote solve your problems, and you give up your power at the same time you give up that responsibility. Well, of course you're in the situation that you're in. They don't tell you that part. See, this is the 3-card Monty that they're playing on you. 3-card Monty is I'm going to solve all your problems. So give me the responsibility. And as soon as you give up the responsibility, at the same time you did that, you gave up the power without even realizing it. Now you have no power. So now you need the politician. See, at first you were interested in the politician when they came with their bullshit message. Now that they sold you on it, now you need them because you don't even realize that you gave up your power at the same time. See, no politician is going to announce that. See, I can tell you that because I'm not a politician. If I got into politics, I would have to tell you this. I would have to fully disclose, and that'd be the end of the game. This is the reason why I stay out of politics, because now I have license to tell you what's real. Bernie Sanders doesn't have this license. Well, actually, he does, but if he used it, then he would be out of politics by the next election. He'd get unseated very easily. This is the game that politicians play. This is the reason why I have maintained. Those of you who've been watching me consistently, you can co-sign this. I have maintained, do not trust or believe in a politician. I don't care who it is. I don't care if they're Democrat. I don't care if they're Republican, male, female, black, white, does not matter. New or old. Do not trust or believe in politicians. The game of politics in the United States of America, because we are such a large country, excuse me, so many people and so many people voting, especially at the federal level or in a big place like New York City, is that the way that you win is you sell people on the concept that you're going to solve all their problems. All they have to do is depend on you and you're going to solve all the problems. The reason why this works is because, as I just explained to you, most human beings are lazy. They don't want responsibility. They just want somebody to solve all their problems for them by just pushing a button. In other words, most people want something for nothing, but scientifically that is impossible. Economically, it is impossible to get something for nothing. But most people will buy into the concept of something for nothing because it triggers their emotions rather than triggering their logic. And emotion overpowers logic 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. And this is what politicians do very well. You got to be really good at this to be a politician. And if you're not good at it, it doesn't come naturally to you. You probably won't succeed as a politician. You want to see an example? Well, I'm an example. That's why I've never tried to get in politics. Another example is look at somebody like Kamala Harris. She tried, but she wasn't good at saying it smoothly. That's why it didn't work. Donald Trump's good at it. It works. Barack Obama was good at it. It works. Bernie Sanders, great at it. It works. Zoran Mamdani looks like he's doing a pretty good job. New York City. It works. Sell people on the concept of something for nothing. Just vote for me and I'm going to solve your problems. I'm going to make life easier. I'm going to lower the price of everything. You're going to get on the train for free. I'm going to lower the cost of your rent. How all this is actually going to happen doesn't quite add up logically. But again, logic doesn't matter if you get people emotionally triggered. Politicians' job is to get people emotionally triggered. It's not about intelligence. It's not about policy. It's not about how are you going to do this or the details or all that. See, any of you asking those questions, you're getting way too logical. The average person is not that logical. And to win an election, you got to talk to the average person, not the exceptional thinking, intelligent person. This is how the game works. So now that y'all all understand this, Bernie Sanders' game is, again, just telling you that your problem is the oligarchs. Now, one thing that makes Bernie a breath of fresh air is at least he's not blaming Donald Trump. Now, he dips into blaming Trump. You saw in the description of his book, he blames Trump a little bit. He dips into the Trump blaming pool a little bit because why not? I mean, why not? You kind of obligated to do it. Just like a rapper is obligated to say the N-word in their song. So you got to say it a couple times. You can't put the song out. You don't say it a couple times. So he had to diss Trump a little bit. But he mostly focuses on the oligarchs, the people with all the money. And it's a great hustle because he cornered the market. And the other reason it's a great hustle because there's always going to be a bunch of people with money. There's always going to be some rich people. This is a beautiful scheme that Bernie Sanders has come up with. He's been running it for, again, 30 plus years, and it's been working. And he sees the light at the end of the tunnel. So he passed on all his hustle. He's given all his game to AOC, and she's going to take the torch, and she's going to be the person who carries it for the next 50 years. Because she's like 50 years younger than Bernie Sanders. So her grandfather is passing her the game. She's going to do it for the next 50 years, and then she'll pass it to somebody else, and they'll just keep going. This is how it works. There's always going to be a couple billionaires out there that you can blame. So you can take the people making $50,000 a year, and they're upset, and they're wondering how they're going to pay for eggs, and put their kids into daycare, and how they're going to pay their electric bill this month. And you say, well, look at these rich guys. There's always going to be some rich guys. There's always going to be some broke people. All right, so this always works. This is a beautiful hustle by Bernie Sanders. Shout out to Bernie Sanders. So let's give Bernie Sanders a round of applause here. Let me pull my soundboard out because I just explained to you Bernie Sanders' entire business model, and this works. And this works not because Bernie Sanders is a bad guy. This actually works because Bernie Sanders is a pretty smart guy. He said, okay, how can I secure my position in politics forever? How can I secure my position in politics forever? I got to find a problem that's always going to exist. So you can't blame a politician because politicians come and go. So you can't blame Trump. So you can't build your career on dissing Trump because Trump's going to leave. Say, what's he going to do when Trump's gone? This is the problem that Democrats have right now. As a whole, Democrats' problem is they're dissing Trump. Their whole thing is Trump, Trump, Trump. Problem is when Trump leaves, now what do you talk about? They don't have nothing to talk about. And I've said this many times over the last several months. Bernie Sanders is smarter than the average Democrat. He said, let me pick a problem that will always exist, no matter who is in politics. And the problem he picked was money. There's always going to be people with money and people without money. So let me just make a whole frame around that. He put a word to it, oligarchs, and he owns it. You hear the word oligarch, you think of Bernie Sanders. He owns that word. Just like you think of golf, you think Tiger Woods. You think tennis, you might think Serena Williams. Think basketball, you might think LeBron James or Michael Jordan. This is beautiful by Bernie Sanders. Let's give him another round of applause. Well done by Bernie Sanders. Now, this book argues that these billionaire families financed the 2024 election while working people didn't really have a say in how the outcomes of the elections went. Let me ask a question to the audience. Do you feel like your vote matters? Yes or no? Does your vote matter? If you're assuming any of you who votes is not a billionaire, you're a billionaire, don't vote. But if you are not a billionaire, do you feel like your vote matters? Do you feel like your vote matters? Yes or no? Assuming that you're not a billionaire. If you're a billionaire, listen to this, don't vote. Don't comment. But if you are not a billionaire, do you think your vote matters? Does your vote actually make a difference? So I'm getting some yeses and some nos. So a lot of Americans, so I'm getting about 70, 80% yeses and 30% nos. So here's the thing. A lot of Americans believe that their vote doesn't matter because they hear the stories. Elon Musk bought Twitter, now X, for what, $44 billion or whatever number was, some crazy number. He buys Twitter for. And then he rigged the algorithm, which he has a right to do. It is a private company. He rigged the algorithm in some way, shape, or form to make sure that Donald Trump won the election, and he succeeded. Donald Trump won the election. Elon Musk didn't get his company destroyed by the Democratic Party because they weren't in power anymore. He did Doge for a little bit, and now Elon Musk rides off into the sunset, living happily ever after. Did that happen? Pretty much, yes. Before that, Twitter, when it was still Twitter, what did they do for the 2020 election? All right, you tell me. They did the exact opposite and made sure Donald Trump lost. Made sure Donald Trump lost in the 2020 election. All right, same thing. And these are all people with big platforms, a whole lot of money, and a whole lot of resources. They're controlling things. So when Donald Trump got inaugurated in January, who was at the inauguration? You had the guys from Facebook, you had the guy from Amazon, you had the guys from Google, and you had Elon. You got all these people with all this money there. The average American, what do they get out of this? The average person was looking at that and saying, okay, these people are running everything. What's the point of me doing anything? They can make whatever I think or say or do completely irrelevant with their money. And a lot of people tend to think this way. And Bernie exacerbates these thoughts by giving you more reasons to believe it. So he's being called out for hypocrisy, criticizing wealth while, again, selling a book for $10 and doing speaking engagements. Again, logically, this doesn't make any sense, but I understand. I understand if you want to bash him for this, I will stand by and let you bash him for this because, again, if he's going to go to the extreme on this, then Bernie Sanders should not accept $1 for anything. Bernie Sanders should be returning his salary because he's making more money than the average American. How much does the average congressperson get? There's $100-something thousand. The average American doesn't make $100,000. So he should be giving that money back. Because in May 2025, he defended, this is what he said, he defended chartering the private jets during his tour despite his anti-wealth message. I got to find out exactly what he said. Let's see if we can find out. Tell me what exactly Bernie Sanders said in 2025 when he was challenged with why he was flying private during his Fight the Oligarchy tour, which seems to be a complete hypocrisy going against his message of fighting oligarchy, flying private just to do a national tour to talk about people with money controlling everything. Give me his exact statements in defending himself, if they exist. All right, so we're going to Grok for this. Let's see what Grok can come up with. We'll give him a minute to come up with it. Now, Bernie Sanders' message appears to resonate amongst disaffected Americans, which I already explained to you all, across the spectrum. It doesn't matter what color you are. If you feel like you don't have money and there's a bunch of people with money and somebody tells you, well, it's not your fault, it's their fault because they got all the money. Well, a bunch of people are going to buy into that. So it revitalizing a base that is tired of traditional partisan elites. Again, this is another smart thing Bernie did. He said, let me not just attach myself to Democrat or Republican, because the Democrats and Republicans, the power balance is always shifting. It's like a seesaw. So how about I attach myself to something that doesn't matter what party I am. I'm always going to have a bunch of people who are unhappy and will listen to me because there's always going to be an enemy to attack. And the enemy, again, he chose people with money versus people without money. All right, there are broke Democrats, there are broke Republicans. There are poor Democrats, there are poor Republicans. To give you I've told you this anecdote. When I was a child, 9 or 10 years old, we had this one TV in the kitchen. My family used to eat dinner together. My mother, my father, my sister, and myself. And I was old enough to understand that there was a divide between Democrats and Republicans because the little TV in the kitchen was on the news and it was talking about Democrats, Republicans. And it was clear that they were on opposing sides. So I asked my mom, because my parents voted in every election. I said, are we Democrats or Republicans? My mom said Democrats. I said, why? And she said, because the Republicans only work for the rich people. So I said, okay, that made it. I didn't say this. So I'm thinking to myself, made it clear who we are. I made it clear we ain't rich. And this is, again, Bernie Sanders, smart thing of him. Say, let's just go after the rich people. And then what happened, though, is people took an extra step. They said, well, who are the rich people, the Democrats or the Republicans? And my parents clearly said it was the Republicans. Anyway, here's what Bernie Sanders said. May 7, 2025 on Fox News with Brent Baer. He was directly challenged. Here's what he said. When was the last time you saw Donald Trump during the campaign at a national airport? So what do we call that? We call that changing the subject. If you don't want to say anything else, that's changing the subject. It's actually a Socratic trap, is what he said. So Bernie Sanders was directly challenged, why are you flying private for a tour about rich guys, bashing rich guys? He said, when's the last time you saw Donald Trump doing it? So basically he turned it around, an indirect tu quoque meaning you too, and said, well, Donald Trump doesn't fly a commercial either, so that means I shouldn't fly a commercial. Isn't Donald Trump the billionaire you're supposed to be fighting against? So you're copying the billionaire and defending yourself by saying, I'm doing the same thing the billionaire is doing. This is Bernie Sanders in his own words, folks. I'm reading you his quote. When's the last time you saw Donald Trump during the campaign at a national airport? That's what Bernie Sanders said. So he references a billionaire. He's on tour fighting billionaires. And then someone says, why are you flying private? He says, well, hey, Donald Trump's a billionaire. He flies private. So, hey, what's the difference? This is your guy, Bernie Sanders. Those of you listening. Then he says this. He says, you run a campaign. These are quotes. You run a campaign, you do 3 or 4 or 5 rallies in a week. The only way you can get around to talk to 30,000 people. So basically he's saying the only way logistically I can get to all these rallies in a week is I have to fly private. I don't know about this. I challenge this concept. I mean, you're doing 4 or 5 rallies in a week. I mean, airplanes leave the airport every day. Is there any airport that doesn't have flights on a certain day of the week? Technically, he can fly a commercial and still get this done. I get what he's saying. I understand what he's saying, because when you fly private, it doesn't matter. You don't have to wait for a scheduled flight, and you can fly when you want to fly because you're chartering the jet, etc. But again, optically, this doesn't make sense. This is what else he says. He says, think I'm going to be standing on a waiting line at United Airlines, waiting, while 30,000 people are waiting. Talking about his crowds. So what Bernie Sanders said is that I'm not like you, average peasant, who stands in line at United Airlines. What I do, I got 30,000 people waiting to hear me speak. So that means and this is my words, I deserve to fly private because, again, I'm not a peasant like you, standing in line at the airport. I got to get on my plane right now because I got somewhere to be right now that is very important and more important than what you're doing. And that's why you are standing at the airline. You're standing at the line at the airport like a peasant, like the peasant that you are. This is Bernie Sanders' actual quotes, folks. Keep on Living said, do you realize how biased you sound? How do I sound biased when I'm reading Bernie Sanders quotes? You think, are you talking to me about Bernie Sanders? Now, here's another thing he says. He says that's the only way you can get around. Talking about himself with his situation. No apologies for that. This is Bernie Sanders talking, folks. That's what campaign travel is about. We've done it in the past. We're going to do it in the future. This is Bernie Sanders basically saying, fuck you. I'm going to fly private and you got a problem with it. So what? Wipe your tears with your food stamps. This is Bernie Sanders said, this is what campaign travel is about. In other words, I am translating this. I'm being tongue in cheek here, but I'm translating what Bernie Sanders is saying is that, okay, if you want to fly private, then you need to campaign like me. So then you can fly private and we can share a jet. Or we can fly into the same place. Are you going from San Francisco to San Antonio? Me too. Let's share the private jet. All right, you just got to be a campaigner like me. So you got to be a politician like me so you can fly private like the oligarchs, like the rich people who have resources. And if you aren't a campaigner, if you're not a politician like me, and you're not a politician in the present, and you're not a politician in the future, and you're just a peasant, working at Walmart, trying to pay your auto insurance, then you got to go stand in line at United Airlines like the peasant that you are. And again, you can wipe your tears with your food stamps. All right, this is Bernie Sanders. These are his quotes. Now, some of that is me. I'm adding to the quote after I read the quote. And again, I'm being hyperbolic and tongue in cheek here. But do you all not see this? This is Bernie Sanders out of his own mouth. You press him enough on these comments, the truth eventually comes out. It's a good thing about listening, folks, is that if you listen long enough, people eventually tell you exactly how they feel. You'll get past the bullshit. And politicians, they got a lot of They're really good at filibustering questions. But if you ask them pointed enough questions and you listen long enough, eventually they get around to telling you what they really think. And Bernie did it when he was challenged on that. Now, his message appears to resonate, again, with these disaffected Americans across the spectrum. Again, smart move by Bernie Sanders. Let's give Bernie Sanders another round of applause for coming up with this idea. Blame it on the rich guys. That's Bernie Sanders' business model. And there was one stop he did in Denver where they got 30,000 people, and it was surpassing anything from his prior presidential campaigns. In other words, Bernie Sanders gets more people to come hear him bash rich guys than he gets to hear him talk about actually running for president, which is an interesting phenomenon. Now, despite decades of advocating for these issues, we know Bernie's been doing this for 30 years. 30 years he's been saying, fight the oligarchy, fight the oligarchy. Tangible legislative success has been limited. In other words, Bernie Sanders has achieved nothing in politics, raising skepticism about whether he is truly affecting change or sustaining a perpetual campaign. Well, there's no skepticism. This has been concluded. This is a concluded question. The question has been answered, and there's a final conclusion on this. The jury has reached a verdict. Bernie Sanders is guilty of sustaining a perpetual campaign against something that he will never achieve, never actually get anything tangibly done in. But he's always going to have another wave of people excited about it because there's always going to be people without money, and they would love an excuse to blame anything other than the person in the mirror. All right, this is a smart move by Bernie Sanders, and at the same time, some bullshit by Bernie Sanders. So how do y'all figure that one out? I'm giving him credit and criticizing him in the same statement. He deserves it. Now, this is a smart perpetual campaign by Senator Sanders. We got any people from Vermont listening to this? Y'all keep voting for this guy. Now, critics say the problems that he highlights, such as inequality, corporate influence, stagnant wages, have only worsened during his tenure. These are all factually true. The inequality between the rich and the poor has only gotten bigger for as long as Bernie Sanders has been in politics. That's an absolute fact. So he hasn't changed that. He's a senator. He's supposed to have the power to do something about this. He's done nothing. Corporate influence has only gotten stronger since he's been in politics. Is this true? Of course it's true. So he's failed at that. Stagnant wages. Wages aren't necessarily stagnant, but wages aren't going up as fast as inflation is going up. In other words, if you're at a certain level wage-wise, and then inflation is also going up, the wages are not going up as fast as the inflation is going up. So your situation is just getting worse and worse and worse. You're getting deeper and deeper underwater. And again, there are more and more Americans facing this situation, which is a real thing. All right, is not something to make light of. I'm not sure there's not a wholesale answer to that question, I will say. And maybe some of you are wondering what I think about that. Let me address that here. There's no wholesale answer to the question. When I say wholesale, what I mean is there's no answer to the question that would save everybody. So being that the number of people who are listening to me right now is less than 1% of the world's population, less than 1% of the American population. We got 350 million people here in America. So being there's less than 1 million people listening to me right now, here's what I'll say to you all who are listening. Being that wages are not going up as fast as inflation is going up, meaning your dollar is becoming less and less valuable every single day. Your job is to position yourself such that that rising tide does not eclipse you, doesn't get over your head or even over your nose so you can still breathe. That's your job. What do you need to do personally to solve that issue? And that's the way you need to be thinking about this. There's a million different things you can do. But the challenge is not, let me tell you what not to do. Do not sit back and wait for any politician, whether it's Trump, Bernie, AOC, Zohran Mamdani, Kamala Harris, Barack, whoever, JD Vance. Don't sit around waiting for a politician to solve this problem because they can't. They cannot make wholesale change that is going to solve your problem. No wholesale change, because all politicians can do is make wholesale change. They can't change something just for you personally and not change everybody else. They can only make changes that affect everybody at once. That's what politics is. Your job is not to sit around and wait to get the same change that the masses of people get. Why I already explained this to you at the beginning of this live stream. The masses of people are average people. You don't want to be an average person by the way that you think, by your outcomes, by your situation, by your options. You don't want to be average. If you wait for a politician to do something that affects you, that's by the time a politician's decision affects you, you're getting the same effect at the same time as the average people. You don't want to be next to them in too many areas of life. As a general rule, You don't want to be getting the same effect at the same time and at the same level as the average people. Now, some people may say, whenever I come up with a concept like this, or I share something like this, there's always somebody who says something like, well, Dre, what if everybody thought like that? Well, here's the issue. Not everybody thinks like this. This is why I just said less than 1% of the American population is listening to me right now, significantly less than 1%. So don't worry about what everybody does. Everybody is the masses. Everybody does not think like this. Everybody will never think like this. Everybody does not even want to hear the shit that I'm saying. I'm talking to you all who are listening to me right now. Don't be in the same boat as the average person. Because the average people are going to find themselves underwater in the next 10 to 15 years. Especially as, well, first of all, the oligarchs, according to Bernie Sanders, are taking over everything. And there are people out there with a whole lot of money who are controlling things, and they are strategically and systematically getting rid of needing people and replacing them with computers and software and code. Is this happening? We know this is happening. AI is just one example of this, but is really automation and robots and just computerization, period. AI is just a piece of that. But this has been happening for the last 20 years. It's happening faster. I believe the concept is called Moore's Law. The computing power doubles every 18 months. I believe that's the concept. The computing power is just getting better and faster, and computers are more efficient than humans. So anything that can be done by a computer, which is an expanding list of things, is just replacing people. That's it. That was happening 20 years ago. It's just happening faster now, and it's more obvious now. And now the average person is starting to understand it. See, people who pay attention to this stuff understood this in 2008. Now the average person is starting to figure it out. Another note for all of you. If you're figuring things out at the same time that the average people are figuring them out, you're thinking too slowly. If you're just now figuring this out, you're behind the curve. Don't figure things out at the same time the average people figure things out. That means you're in the wrong place to be. As another note, these are things Bernie Sanders will never tell you. And our AOC won't tell you this either. So the book provides a clear roadmap of his policy proposals, which means absolutely nothing. Who cares about Bernie Sanders' policy proposals? He ran for president, didn't win. He got, depending on who you ask, he got the rug pulled out from under him by the Democratic Party a couple times. Probably true. But he proposed a clear roadmap of his policy proposals, which will never happen. So that's the reason why it doesn't matter, because his policy proposals are inconsequential because he's never going to win. So he talks about strengthening unions. Okay. Regulating campaign finances. Sounds great. Cutting the work week. Beautiful idea. Mobilizing grassroots as a counterweight to elites. Okay. All of these things have been tried. None of them has succeeded. So this all sounds great. And this is politics. Bernie Sanders has it in his bones. I don't think this is an act by Bernie Sanders. I think he truly believes everything that he's saying. The problem is all nonsense. None of it is ever going to happen. And it all sounds great. This is all pie in the sky stuff that you can sell to the masses, because the masses of people, again, I'll say this for the 8th time here today, they don't want the responsibility of solving their own problems. So any politician that comes along with a good enough message that they say often enough and they seem to believe, Bernie Sanders checks all 3 boxes, they will get a groundswell of support from the people who don't want the responsibility for themselves. Bernie Sanders has held this position for a long time, and he's trying to pass it to his understudy, AOC. I don't think she's as good as him, but she might get better. And that's where we're at. All right, so Fighting Oligarchy outlines these reforms in every chapter of the book. I'm sure it does. Oh, yeah, I meant to mention other Bernie Sanders books. This is not the first Bernie Sanders book, by the way. Here are the books in Bernie Sanders' collection. Other books Bernie Sanders has. In, I don't know what year this was. He wrote a book called Our Revolution, A Future to Believe In. I think this is talking about when he ran for president in 2016. Then he wrote a book called It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism. Of course. Then he has a book called The Bernie Sanders Guide to Political Revolution. And then he has Where We Go From Here, Bernie Sanders. Then he has The Speech on Corporate Greed and the Decline of Our Middle Class. Then he has Bernie Speaks. So he took a bunch of his speeches and put it into a book. This one was kind of older. Let me see if I can get a chronology of these books. Give me a chronology of all Bernie Sanders published books over the years, what year they were published, and a short sentence about what each one is about. So let's find out about Bernie Sanders' authoring career. I wonder how big his book advances have been. How big y'all think Bernie Sanders' biggest book advance ever was? Give me a number. So we talked about the book advances. Joe Biden got 10 million. Kamala Harris got 20 million. Michelle and Barack Obama together got 65 million. How much do you think Bernie Sanders got? Not for this book, but for any book. Like the biggest one he got his whole career. How big you think Bernie's biggest book advance has ever been? The Obamas got 65. Kamala got 20. Joe Biden got 10. How much do you think Bernie Sanders got? Keep on living said, who cares? We care. There's a reason why we talking about Bernie Sanders. You're still in here because you're listening. So I see 10, 20, 40, 5, 1. I think it's in the single digits. I think it's single millions. Tom said 50 million. You think Bernie Sanders got more than Kamala? I don't think so. You might be right, but I don't know if we'll ever find out. I think he's probably in the $5 million range. I say Bernie's probably in the 5 mil range. But I may be underestimating. So let's see if we can find out about his book. So Grok is still working. So I told Grok to do deep dives and get me deep information. So they're taking a little bit of time here. I'll go give you one more point before we come back to that. Some people believe Sanders is repackaging decades-old rhetoric without any new strategy, suggesting that this is a momentum-building tool rather than a serious blueprint for congressional action. Really? Oh, that's what you think? How long did it take you to come up with that idea? Of course that's what this is. That's all this is. All this is him repackaging the same shit he's been saying for 30 years and failing at for 30 years. He just came up with a new title and a new way to say the same thing he's been saying. This is the thing that they say about sports coaches, is that the job of a sports coach, and my background is as a professional athlete, so I believe this is true. The job of a sports coach is to take the same stuff, the same 6 things that you want the team to understand, and you just got to come up with 100 different ways of saying. That's the job of a sports coach. You're saying the same stuff over and over again. You're just figuring out different ways to say it so it doesn't go in one ear and out the other for the players. That's all it is. Legendary basketball coach Phil Jackson said about 9 or 10 years is the length. I forget how many years he said. I think he said 9 years. But it might have been less than that. It might have been a different number. But he had a number. He said after 9 years, that's time when you got to walk away as the coach of a basketball team. And he said the reason why is because eventually the players just get tired of hearing your message. You're not getting through to them anymore. You got about 9 years of shelf life before they need to hear the same thing from a different person. They can't keep hearing the same thing from you. This is the reason why companies hire consultants and trainers and speakers. It's not because they don't have the information to give to the team. It's because the team needs to hear the same thing from somebody different. And I appreciate that because I work as a consultant, trainer, and speaker. Bernie Sanders saying the same thing he's been saying for 30 years. The good thing for Bernie, because some of you may say, well, why hasn't Bernie been replaced? It's been 30 years. If he's saying the same thing, well, he is about to be replaced by time. He's about to be replaced by death. And AOC is going to take his spot. But why has he not been replaced in 30 years? The reason he hasn't been replaced is because there's always a new wave of voters coming through. So the people who could vote in 1993 are not the same people voting in 2025. Some of you are the same, but many are not. So there's always a new wave of people. So in 1997, this is Bernie Sanders' bookography, I guess we'll call it, his bibliography. 1997, he wrote a book called The Outsider in the House. It's a political memoir that details his early career in politics, highlighting, guess what? Income inequality. 1997, he wrote a book about income inequality and corporate influence. In 1997, folks, so 30 years ago. In 2011, The Speech, a historic filibuster on corporate greed and the decline of our middle class. So this is a transcript of a speech that Bernie gave that took 8.5 hours. This is a Senate filibuster. So you remember that nonsense that Cory Booker did a couple months ago? That was like 24 hours. Bernie Sanders did the same thing, but it was only 8 hours. Only 8 hours. He basically took that whole speech and made it into a book. And it was opposing a tax bill that he said it disproportionately benefited the wealthy while harming the middle class. So he took that 8.5 hour speech, turned it into a book. So good hustle by Bernie Sanders. 2016, Our Revolution, A Future to Believe in. These are all Bernie Sanders books. This is a reflection on his failed 2016 campaign. So you see, run for president, lose, write a book. Now y'all see this system? Run for president, lose, write a book. So a reflection on his 2016 campaign, outlining his progressive vision for addressing climate change, income inequality. There it is again, 20 years later, income inequality, free college tuition. Oh, where have we heard that one? And other social justice issues. This is in 2016, everybody. So y'all think these are new ideas. All right, these are not new ideas, folks. All right, they've been recycled for years. 2017, a year later, he writes another book. Bernie Sanders' Guide to Political Revolution. He writes another book that quickly. I'm betting his previous book did pretty well. So I think that book he put out in 2016 probably did pretty well. That's why he put out another one next year. 2017, he wrote a book for young adults, and it was an adaptation of the 2016 book. Again, publishers will do this. Your book comes out and it does amazing. They are on your heels, like write another one, write another one, write another one, real quick, because you're still hot from the last book. We want to get you another book out on the shelves because that one's going to sell too. This is how the publishing industry works. So that 2016 book probably did pretty well. So he used infographics and explanations to encourage teens to advocate for progressive reforms, tricky word, progressive, in areas like, check this out, healthcare, climate change, criminal justice, and economic equality. Again, this is 2017, everybody. Y'all think these are new ideas. These ain't new. All right, 2018, he wrote another book. So both of those books must have did well. So Bernie Sanders is on a nice run of book writing. 2018, where we go from here? 2 years into the resistance. So this is when Bernie Sanders jumped into his TDS mode. He wrote a whole book about Donald Trump. 2 years into the resistance. That's in the title of his book, The Resistance. Y'all remember The Resistance? When Donald Trump won, the whole thing was resist, resist, resist. Anything Donald Trump says or does, go against it. Bernie Sanders jumped into this with both feet. So this is an account from his post-2016 election efforts in opposing the Trump administration, supporting progressive candidates. All right, so Bernie Sanders is part of this. Zohran Mamdani has Bernie Sanders to thank, protecting healthcare, and building grassroots movements for change. So that movement for change, y'all thought that was new. That ain't new. All right, people have been doing this for years. Bernie Sanders has been talking about it for 30. This is in 2018. So I guess that was the end of his book run. So 5 years later, he wrote another book. So he took 5 years off from writing books. 2023, he came back, wrote another book. The title of this book is It's Okay to be Angry About Capitalism. That's what he called the book. It's Okay to be Angry About Capitalism. A critique of unchecked capitalism's role in exacerbating income inequality. There it is again. Corporate greed, again. Climate destruction, again. And the erosion of democracy. That's a new one he threw in there. Ever since Trump came in, now all of a sudden democracy is being eroded, with calls for transformative economic and political reforms. So he's making calls for these things to happen, but not actually doing anything. Typical politician. Now in 2025, we know about this one, Fighting Oligarchy, a call to action for building a broad political movement to challenge billionaire influence and create a government that prioritizes the needs of all Americans over a wealthy elite. So if y'all notice anything about Bernie Sanders' books, he's saying the same things. He just comes up with different ways of saying it. This is a compliment. I'm not even saying it as a criticism. That's a compliment. He's saying the same thing. How do you say the same thing for 30 years, just coming up with different ways of saying it and are able to remain relevant the entire time? That's a skill. So let's give Bernie Sanders another round of applause. Saying the same thing for 30 years that fails, doesn't work. You have not achieved anything. You've not gotten any serious movement done on it. The situation that you are bleeding about has only gotten worse, yet you have remained relevant, continue to get reelected, continue to have fans, and you can continue to publish books. And that's a skill, folks. This is an achievement by Bernie Sanders. So if I meet Bernie Sanders, I got to shake his hand and compliment him on maintaining this bullshit for 30 years. I really will. If I see him on a plane, well, I guess I won't see him on a plane because I guess I'm a peasant flying commercial and he is flying private. So I guess I'll never see him on a plane. But if we ever share a private plane, then I will, maybe I'll just go live on TikTok and let y'all see me doing this with Bernie Sanders. So all that said, everybody, I think I get through everything I need to say here. I do need to take a quick restroom break. Let me take a restroom break and then we will get into the comments here. We get to some of our favorite sounds, such as strawberry cheesecake, and have some more chicken, some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's boiled or fried. 90 seconds. All right, let's get to it, everybody. I'm going to the comments. Let's see what we got on. Nothing there, nothing there. I don't think I saw anything on Instagram. Thank you for the gifts. The people who are coming in with the gifts. I see you all on TikTok while I'm talking. All right, let's see what we got. I'm going from oldest to newest, folks. We got about 38 minutes max for me to get through these comments. Let's see what we got. Kara, my dear, says AOC doesn't strike me as being effective for the long haul. No, she doesn't strike me that way either. She's not going to be because she's a little bit too extreme. She is following the Bernie Sanders approach, and she adds in, being that she's female, she adds in a little bit too much emotion. She gets a little bit too hyperbolic. She's not going anywhere serious in terms of presidency, but she could maybe get some control of the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party seems to be leaning towards this progressivism. So we'll see. Kenny, thanks for the follow. Jennifer Stewart, thanks for the repost. Nanny Cat said they'll complain about President Vance. Well, there'll always be complaints about whoever's in charge. That's normal. Doesn't matter what side they're on. Rick Thomas says, wow, emotion outweighs logic. How can you get emotion out of the equation? Well, technically, you can't get emotion out of the equation because human beings have emotions. The contained human being has the ability to recognize their emotions but not be controlled by them, Rick. And that's when I talk about the power presence protocol. That's the link in my profile. That's one of the major pieces of what we do is we teach you how to utilize and channel the energy of your emotions, but not allow your emotions to control you. When people allow their emotions to control them, they tend to make mistakes. So you're asking a good question, but you don't completely remove emotion. You utilize emotion. Most people allow emotion to utilize them. So you flip it around is what you do. So some of you saying, no, you don't believe your vote matters. Cure fan says, not if you vote Republican in Connecticut. I understand. Cash Now says electoral college. Well, the electoral college tends to follow what the popular vote says. Skittle said, no, because I live in Illinois. Jennifer said, not really. Our voice doesn't really matter. LOL. John said, collectively it does. Yes, collectively it does matter. So what I believe is that if you think your one vote isn't making a difference, it might not because there's a bunch of people voting opposite you in the same place. But what you can do is you can get other people to vote the way that you vote, and now it starts to make a difference. So individually, just one person voting may not, but there's things that you can do. This is the reason why, one of the great things about social media, you can start putting your message out there and influencing people. Keep on Living said, not with electoral college. But electoral college tends to follow what the popular vote says, doesn't it? When has it not? In the last 25 years, when is it not? Let's see. Jennifer said, I like having smart, wealthy people in power, preferably a man. All right, fair enough. Which is generally how it's been, actually, for a while. Sonata 90, thanks for the follow. Nana Cat, so what's my take on helping Israel? Helping them with what? I talked about them. I talked about that a couple months back. Mo Hess, thanks for the follow. Anthony, thanks for the follow. Bruce said, call it deflection. Cinnamon Toast Cowboy said, Trump hates you.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
Keep on Living said, you realize how biased you sound. What am I biased towards? I am biased, but what am I biased towards and what am I biased against? It depends on the context. So I am biased on certain things. I am biased about people taking responsibility over their own situation. So I accept that bias. But if you're talking about something different, tell me what you're referring to. Sirs Michaud, thanks for the follow. Echoes 9711. Good morning. Jiminous Kiss said, yeah, great tactic. Let's condemn all the politicians. No one wins. Great job, man. Okay, so this is...
I like your funny words, Magic Man.
A little bit of sarcasm in there. I see your sarcasm, Jiminous Kiss. Condemning all politicians. I do condemn all politicians. In America, in our current system, I condemn all politicians. Yes, they're all liars. None of them are trustworthy, and none of them has a main priority of doing anything for you. And about no one winning is a non sequitur.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
There are plenty of people out there winning, and you had to speak for yourself, despite the fact that they do not trust or depend on politicians. Winning and not condemning politicians do not connect. That's why this is a non sequitur. It does not follow. And then great job is a little bit of sarcasm that you threw in there at the end. And I'm going to give you a straw man for the implied straw man of this entire frame.
Strawberry cheesecake.
So for that, Jim and his kiss, congratulations. You get the first Russell Westbrook triple-double logical fallacy award of the day.
Oh, baby, a triple. Oh, yeah.
Stephen Albert said, wipe your tears with your food stamps. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm paraphrasing what Bernie Sanders said. Again, I'm being hyperbolic here. But yes. And Mbaba said, are you sure that's the context? Yes, I'm reading direct quotes from him when he was specifically challenged as to why are you flying private while you're on tour fighting the oligarchy? And he said, you think I'm going to be standing in line at United because I got places to be. I got 30,000 people waiting for me. That's what he said. KJ Freeman said, I've enjoyed spending a little bit of my mornings with you live. Enjoy your viewing topics. Well, thank you, KJ Freeman. Karina said they're all actors. I don't think a lot of them are acting. I think they truly believe it. They just kind of pump it up a little bit. Just being us, thanks for the follow. 003 Samson, thanks for the share. Carla, I appreciate you. Steven said, just don't mind what I'm doing. Fight the holo. What does that mean? Gerald Floyd, thanks for the follow. Miss B said, the youth always believe anything because they don't know the past. Well, maybe. I don't know about anything. I get what you're saying, though. Oh, fight the oligarchy, yes. AB said he has tried. He can't do it alone. Well, it's been 30 years. I think he knows a lot of people in Washington, D.C. It's not working is the issue. It's not that he's the only one trying. It's that it's not working. His approach has failed. We can't, at some point, you can't keep saying that it's something outside of him. It's him. It's Bernie. It's not the other people not helping him. It's him. Googleplex said, have you read the dictionary description of the word oligarchy? Yes, I did. And paraphrasing, it's when a few people with a lot of resources control everything. Texas Joker, thanks for the follow. Echoes 97 said, you are nailing it today. Thank you. I thought I nailed it every day. Judy Simmons, 781, thank you. Turner Frank Washington, thank you. Traditional all day, good morning, thank you. Rocket Power, thanks for the share. John 316 said, the only one that can improve your situation is God, 6,000 years and counting. Fair enough. Leather and Pearls, good morning. Miss Banks, good morning. Karina, thank you for the goat. Zachary said, so rich people are bad. Zachary does a straw man framing. Be careful. And no, I didn't say rich people are bad. Bernie Sanders has pushed the frame that rich people are bad because it's making it harder for the non-rich person. And that's a frame which I reject. Marky Man said, everyone should have a side hustle. Possibly. I know what you mean, though. BSID said, what does oligarchy mean? Okay, let me pull up that definition of oligarchy again, since some of you didn't hear me define it at the beginning of this live stream. We'll get a direct word-for-word definition of oligarchy. Oligarchy is a small group of people who exercise control over a country, business, etc. Small group of people who have control over things. That's an oligarchy. Rick says, I was replaced by a computer in 1980 in an aluminum factory. Interesting. Lady Lux, thanks for the follow. Keep on living, so who cares? All of us. That's why we're in here, including you, listening to this. King said, I disagree. I want my tax dollars being reinvested in things that benefit our community instead of corporate welfare. What are you disagreeing with? And when you say corporate welfare, what are you referring to? And also when you say reinvested, things that benefit their community, what are you talking about? So I need more context here. Miriam McDevitt said, we own a business, so we are not the average people. Yes, I understand. I'm not saying everybody's average. What I'm saying is there are more average people than there are above average people. So if you want to reach the masses, you got to reach the average people. Kathy Warren, thanks for the follow. Nee says, Sanders just wants to get in the Democratic presidential committee position. Why? Why would he want to after, according to what people are saying, they pulled the rug out from under him twice. Nee said, Bernie does what Schumer and Pelosi tell him to do. Well, I thought he was an independent. Keep on living said, wanting a middle class is a bad thing. That's a straw man. All right, now I got to start giving out these awards.
Strawberry cheesecake.
Never did I say that wanting a middle class is a bad thing. And secondly, wanting a middle class and actually having one are two different things. Third, the middle class is going away right now. Nothing Bernie Sanders does, nothing the government does is going to maintain the middle class. I've told you all this last year. Those of you who haven't heard me talk about this, the middle class is disappearing. So if you consider yourself to be middle class, here's what's going to happen. You don't even have to make a choice. You can make a choice. I suggest that you do. What's going to happen is the middle class is going to be dissolved, and there's going to be some people in the middle class are going to move into the upper class, and then everybody else who doesn't move into the upper class is going to become part of the lower class, the peasantry. That's going to happen naturally. So if you are middle class, I suggest that you start making moves to put yourself into the upper class. Wanting a middle class is irrelevant, because just because you want something doesn't mean it's going to happen. And you cannot make a middle class exist amongst 350 million people, because that would mean you control their behaviors, which is impossible. And looking at the way technology is going, there's not going to be a middle class. The middle class are the people who do a lot of the jobs, and a lot of jobs are being replaced by computers. Who owns those computers? People in the upper class. So that's what's happening. That's not about anybody wanting anything. Then it said Bernie has been a grifter for 35 years. Well, I just say that's been his hustle. I don't know if I want to call it a grift. I don't think he's scamming anybody, because a grift is like a scam. It's like doing something dishonest. So I don't like when people use the word grift, because people use it on all sides, and they say grift when somebody's making money doing something that they don't like. I don't mind Bernie making money selling his book, because a bunch of people want to read the shit that he's writing. I don't believe what he's saying, but I think there's a lot of people who really do buy into it. So I'm not mad at them for wanting to read it. I just say it's a hustle. The hustle is, this is what he's doing, and there's a bunch of people who like it. And he has been that for 35 years, whether you call him a hustler, grifter, whatever words you want to use. 35 years, this is true. HeteroSurf said most people don't actually write their books. They give notes to a ghostwriter. Well, HeteroSurf, I have extensive experience in the publishing industry. And yeah, not most. The answer is not most. When it comes to super famous people, a lot of them do not write their books, but some of them do. Barack Obama said he wrote his book by hand, and I believe him. I believe he actually wrote his. Now, somebody like Donald Trump, he is a person who would more talk, and then someone would record what he's saying, and then they would write based on what he said. Even Malcolm X, his autobiography was written by Alex Haley. Malcolm X did all the talking. Alex Haley just wrote down everything he said, and then he turned it into a book. So that's still a book. You still get credit for writing a book if it's your words on the page. That's the way it works these days. It used to be, well, you didn't get credit if you didn't actually do the writing yourself. But these days it's so common that it's not even something that needs to be said anymore. It's kind of like if a woman gets plastic surgery, it used to be you notice it like, damn, she got plastic surgery. Now so many people have it. It's like it's been accepted as a normal thing. But I live in South Florida, so maybe I'm jaded. Abby, thanks for the share. Leah said, if you're just joining, please follow and send the heart me. That's right. Send your heart me. Zena Williams, thank you for the share. Jiminy Slick said, you need to revise and say facts and reality don't matter. Well, I've already said that a million times in the past. Facts don't matter. They do matter, but they don't matter at the same time. Where was I? Anastasia, thanks for the lightning bolt. Iggy's Gaga, thanks for the heart. And joining the fan club. Weather and Pearls, thank you for the lightning bolt. Leah, thank you for the lightning bolt, helping people help me get to the goal. Stephen Albert, thanks for the greeting heart. Tristan said, Dre, you need to change the soundboard to some new sounds. I like the classic sounds. I like these sounds because y'all get used to them. You know that they're coming. That's actually what makes it fun, is that you know they're coming. But we'll see. Nathan Don said, record time, 58 seconds. Record time? All right, thank you. Stephen Albert, level 10. Thank you. Rick Thomas, thank you. Tilly in Texas said, hilarious that rich politicians want to fight the oligarchy, man. They don't want to fight the oligarchy. This is just the hustle so that they can keep people engaged. They keep you engaged. You keep voting for them. They keep winning. O'Skin says it takes a critical mass for voices and votes to matter. That is correct. That's right. Which is why politicians have to talk to the critical mass. The critical mass are the average people. And that's how you win elections. Skittle 1031 said, Illinois elections are decided by a single county, Cook, which is Chicago. Okay. Was it because it just has so many people? If so, then I understand. Same thing with New York. I mean, New York State is actually a red state with one big blue city in it. New York State is very red. New York City is very blue, but New York City is bigger in terms of population than the rest of New York State. That's why New York is a blue state. But the state of New York itself is extremely red. New York City should just be its own electoral base, and New York State its own. But New York State wouldn't get that many votes because there ain't that many people outside of New York City. Natasha Van Reen York, thank you for the follow. Elizabeth said, joining from my hospital room. Why are you in the hospital? Are you working or are you actually in the hospital? Marty said, Bernie Sanders is an oligarch. He got rich off the pharmacy and Port Vermonters to do a lot of things. So a lot of people have said that about him. He denies it, though. Miss Queen Bee, thanks for the heart. Kuya Ben Yashara, thank you for the lightning bolt. Leah said, if you're just joining, follow and grab your heart me. Yes, Sharon, good morning. Stephen Albert said, corporate welfare, you realize that you're a corporation, you yourself, we are all just a corporation. But when they say corporate welfare, what they mean is the corporations are supposed to give back because they're making so much money. I get what it means. Marky Man said, Amazon's laying off 600,000 people next 7 years due to AI. Yeah, I posted about that on X yesterday. Amazon announced yesterday they're laying off 600,000 people in the next 7 years because those people are being replaced by artificial intelligence. What I say is going to be closer to 1 million people, and it's going to happen faster than 7 years. 7 years is a conservative estimate. It's not going to take them that long. They're going to lay off a whole bunch of people very quickly, and they're going to be replaced by computers. Pretty soon it's going to be, just this morning, as a matter of fact, I go outside and run a few times a week. So this morning I was out to run, or I was getting ready to run. I'm warming up, and it's about 5 a.m, and this car drives by me in the area that I'm at in front of my building. And I could see he had on the vest, the Amazon vest. Because the only people you see driving at that time of morning are Amazon delivery guys. And I guess they got to wear the vest so people know they're Amazon. And he drove in and he drove out, dropping off a package. Those people will not have jobs. That will not be a job. There's going to be autonomous vehicles will be driving up. Then a robot's going to get out of the car, put your package at your front door, take a picture of the package at the front door, and put it in the system, whatever, so that you get the notification from Amazon, your package has been delivered. Then it's going to get back in the car and drive off. That's happening. So all those Amazon delivery drivers, that won't be a job anymore. People who work in the Amazon factories, so you order some lotion off Amazon, there's a worker in there who there's like, oh, you got to get the lotion. It's in section G, row 88, or whatever. To go get that thing and put it in the package and then put it in a little yellow envelope with the smiley face on it and put it in the box so that it can go out. That's going to be replaced by robots. That's going to be the first thing replaced. The first thing replaced is going to be the factory stuff because that's more controllable, has fewer variables. The autonomous vehicles is going to be harder to replace because there's a lot of kinks they got to work out in terms of how those vehicles operate, not hitting a person. How does the robot get out of the car? How do they find the location? All that, how they talk to the person at the front desk if there is one. What do they do if there's a dog in the yard and all that stuff? So they got to figure that out. That's going to take a little bit more time. But the factory workers, which there's a whole lot of people working in those factories. They are very big facilities. They're getting replaced by 2030. That's not going to take 7 years. It's not going to even take that long. Mary McDevitt said, your lives are underrated. I look forward to these. I always learn something new. Thank you, Mary. Oh, that might be Marie. I think it's Marie. Thank you, Marie. Natasha said, do you think Florida is getting rid of property taxes? I heard Ron DeSantis saying that he's going to try. We'll see about that. I think the state legislature is going to fight that because a lot of their funding comes from those property taxes. Taxes fund government operations. So if there's no taxes, how's the government going to run? Those people won't make any money. So how are they going to let that happen? So we'll see. I say it sounds good, but let's see if it actually happens. Kuya Ben Yashara, thanks for the gifts. Oskins, thanks for the gifts. Christy, thank you for the gifts. Leah, thank you for the gifts. Member level 26, Leah. Gene said, yes, I'm from New York. Yeah, I know New York is a red state. And again, if it wasn't for New York City, New York would be red. Miss B said, I like to see them robots in the north trying to plow through 3 feet of snow. Well, Miss B, those robots will do better than humans at plowing through 3 feet of snow. That's just simple computer programming. Miss B, I think you underestimate the power of computers. Leah says, really sad that so many people will not have a job. Well, I see how it can be sad in one direction, but it also can be just reality in another direction. It can be good if you're one of the people who no longer has to pay employees. Now you can keep a lot more of your money if you're the business owner. I said maybe in about 2017, it was probably around that time I did an episode on my podcast. I said, in the future, everybody's going to be an entrepreneur. I've been saying this for a long time, and it was for different reasons than AI. AI wasn't really a thing back then. I mean, it existed, but it wasn't mainstream. It was because people are not going to get paid just for showing up. Like right now, there are people who get paid just for showing up. You just show up at the job and you're guaranteed a certain amount of money. That is going away. It's going to be, if you have a job in the future, you're going to get paid based on what you produce. And if you produce more than the person next to you, you get more money. It's no more everybody's on the same salary. There's not going to be any salary jobs. It's going to be you get paid based on your production. If you don't produce, you get nothing. Good news is any of you can create a system that produces so that the system does all the production and you collect the money because the system's not a person and you don't have to pay the system money. So the future is, folks, everybody is going to be an entrepreneur or you're just going to be unemployed. But there's not going to be such thing as unemployment because employment is not going to be an expected thing. This is where things are going. This is in our lifetimes, everybody. So we're not talking about the Jetsons when everybody's flying up in the sky. We're talking about in our lifetimes, this is happening. Heather, the written pieces. Good morning. Christy said, sorry. I missed my spot. Christy said, sorry, I didn't know that comment was off topic. You can ask a comment that's off topic. I may not address it. I may address it. Ask whatever you want. Marie said, maybe the only jobs available will be a human making robots unless they have a robot making robots. So Marie, you're right there. For now, it's going to be humans making robots, and then the robots are going to learn what the humans do, and the robots are going to make robots, and then that job will go away too. The job is going to be, the business is going to be owning the robot that makes the robots. That's the place where you want to be. You want to be the robot. You want to be the person in control of the robots that make robots. That's where you want to be. Tina said, call you my daily dose of common sense. So I'm happy to be that. Man the Cat says, everyone needs to learn a trade to fall back on. Possibly. You just need something that's future-proof is what people need. So a few of you have mentioned a few things that would help in the future, whether it be a side hustle or a trade. It's something that's future-proof. Whatever it is needs to be future-proof. That's the key. Stephen Albert said, all states need to do property taxes. A scam. Once you pay off your house, you still have to pay. Well, yeah, Stephen, that's because you don't own the house. It's not your house. If you're paying tax on something that you own, you don't own it. So again, why would the government give that up? So again, as I said, it sounds good that they're going to eliminate property tax, but why would the government just stop taking money they can already legally take from you? Why would they just stop doing it out of the kindness of their hearts? And Stephen said, or lose your home is never owning your home. That's right. If you're paying property tax, you don't own it. So there's no such thing as owning a home, if you really think about it, because if you're paying taxes to the government. So if you don't pay your tax to the government, what happens? They take it. So how is it yours if you got to keep paying for it? It ain't yours. Ms. B said, if nobody's got a job, who's going to buy their product? That's a good question. And this is a question that someone like Bernie directionally is trying to address. Directionally, Bernie is trying to get at this. So when I heard Bernie on the Joe Rogan podcast, so we made fun of Bernie here today. But on the Joe Rogan podcast, Bernie Sanders was actually making some legitimate points that did make sense. If you listen to him on Joe Rogan, he did not sound crazy. He was saying some things that made sense. And I said, okay, he sounded normal and cogent in this conversation. He did. And that is a legitimate question. There is a legitimate question that if people are getting fired and nobody has a job, who's actually going to be buying the products? And that's a question that does need to be answered. So there is going to be something has to be figured out here. Right now, we're just hurtling towards people losing their jobs and people not having resources. And no one has said, we got to slow down to figure that out. Actually, a lot of people have said that, but who's going to do the slowing down? So that's a question I can't answer yet. I can't answer that question right now. It's a question that does need to be asked, though. Miss B, good question. Rick Thomas said, thank you for the education. You're welcome. Sheila G, good morning. Cigar said, except for Congress. What about them? Sheila G, thanks for the gifts. Leah said, how can people afford to live? Well, you're going to eat the bugs. That's what's going to happen. Eating the bugs. That's what it's going to be. I told y'all, there's going to be an upper class, there's going to be a lower class. It's not going to be a middle class. Middle class are the people who do most of the jobs. Middle class spends most of the money. And the middle class is most of the houses. That's middle class. All of that's about to go away. It's going to be a different world in 2050 than what we have right now. Freedom said, retired at 60. Key is to develop income streams to support yourself and your family. This is true. Lee White said, you're a good person. Thank you. Kevin said, my trade is future proof. Well, what do you do, Kevin, since you shared? And thank you for the love you so much and join the fan club. Christy Curiel said, thanks for breaking things down and simplifying them. Appreciate you. You're welcome. This is what I do best. Caricature Creation says, sounds like a straw man on property taxes. How so? If you own a house, quote unquote, own a house, but you have to keep paying somebody to maintain your ownership, do you actually own it? That's a legitimate question, unless you're asking about something else. Kevin said, which means we're all owned by the government. That's right. That is what it means. You got to pay taxes on money that you make. So it's not really your money. Because if you don't pay the taxes, they come get you, right? Or they send you to jail, or they take more money from you as a penalty for not giving them the amount that they told you had to give in the first place. Isn't this how we got revolution in the first place? Taxation without representation. And if people feel like they're not being represented, here's the fix, everybody. If y'all want to take it this far, the fix is there must be anarchy. There was anarchy in the United States in 1776. There was anarchy. There was the Boston Tea Party. There was the revolution. There was anarchy. Anarchy said, we don't like the system. The system's not working for all of us. And we need to create a completely different system that serves everybody, that is by everybody and serves everybody, by the people and for the people. We had anarchy. A bunch of people lost their lives in the process. And when the dust cleared, we had a new system. So those of you thinking long term, how are we going to do this? How's anybody going to buy anything? How are people going to live? How are people going to pay bills? How are people going to have houses? Based on the way things are going right now, there needs to be anarchy. Donald Trump is a step towards anarchy. So you see the way people are pushing back against him and talking about him. He's destroying the White House and he's doing this and he's undermining democracy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The reason why Donald Trump got so much support, this is not the only reason, but one of the main reasons Donald Trump got so much support is because there are a lot of Americans who said, we want him to destroy the current system because the current system ain't working. And that's the reason why he got a lot of support. So he is a step in the direction of let's get rid of the current system. It is clearly not working for everybody the way that it was designed to. But the problem is Donald Trump's going to be gone after 2028. So what happens after that? If somebody else comes in and we get right back to politics as usual, then again, it's going to have to be another hurricane is going to have to come through the system. And the next hurricane is going to be bigger than Donald Trump. So if you think there's a lot of unrest based on his presence, wait till the next one that comes through. And there has to be anarchy. Those of you who don't like the governmental system, you don't like the fact that Bernie Sanders is 83 years old, he's still in politics 35, 40 years later. There has to be anarchy to keep that from happening. Term limits won't happen unless Congress says we're going to have term limits. The problem is the people who would be limited are the people in Congress. So why would they vote to fire themselves? So there has to be anarchy, folks. Anarchy means a lot of people are going to die in the process. So when I say anarchy, I'm not talking people posting on social media. I'm talking real anarchy. 1776 type anarchy. All right, so if y'all ready for that, and you're ready to send your sons out to that, that's what we're going to need. That's how this system gets fixed. There has to be anarchy because the way it's currently set up, the people operating the system are good. Bernie Sanders is in a good space. He could talk shit all day about anarchy, but he's still flying private. He's still selling books. Bernie Sanders is good. His bills are paid. And he's the one talking about anarchy. So he's not really feeling it. The people who are really feeling it are the everyday people. 1776 was the everyday people saying this is not okay. That's what has to happen. So as long as you all are all right with your sons and your grandsons being the ones who lay their lives on the line in exchange for it, that's how it changes. That's really where it's really going to come down to. Big picture. That's what it's going to come down to. Stephen Albert, appreciate you. Roseanne said, I missed your answer to my question about everyone being upper class. Someone came to my door. Well, in the future, no, it's not going to be everybody. Some people are going to be upper class and everybody else is going to be lower class. What was the question, Roseanne? Christy Curiel, thank you for the heart. Jess Ashley said he's very sharp for his age, unlike Biden. I agree with that. That's true. Rick Thomas said, which of your books will give a better understanding of emotion over logic? Let me think about that. Which one of mine do I really talk about that? I don't dive that deep into it specifically in any of mine. It's just my normal style. So all of my books are kind of like that because all my books are written by me. So I kind of have this angle in everything that I write, Rick. The best one would be my Power Presence Protocol manual, but you can't buy that book. You can't buy this book. Only way what you can do though, Rick, is you can get into the Power Presence Challenge, which is starting November 10th, which is 2 Mondays from this upcoming Monday. It's going to be a 5-day challenge. You can get in that by going to powerpresenceprotocol.com. That's the best way where you can learn it directly from me. The best experience of my teaching is to hear it directly from me the same way you are hearing me right now. You can read the book, but the book is not the same as hearing me actually say it to you. So in the challenge is going to be live, where I'm going to be speaking to the audience just like this, and I will even answer your questions just like this. So Rick, that's the best way to do it. Go to the link in my profile and register for the challenge starting November 10th. Stephanie Turkett said the government will control what we can have and can't, so it won't matter. Yes, unless there's anarchy. Dawn said, what's the best way to invest for retirement? Well, I can't give you financial advice. I'm not qualified to give you financial advice. I always get advice from a qualified financial advisor before making any financial decisions. But it depends on your age. It depends on your goals, Dawn. So I can't really answer that question with a blanket response. I would say long term, as a simple blanket answer, the S&P 500 returns an average of 8% over the last 100 or so years. So if you invest consistently in the S&P 500, regardless of what you hear on the news or what the stock market is doing, crash, bear market, bull market, just consistently invest in the S&P 500, it has consistently delivered 8%, I think 8.5% return historically over 100 years. And that continues to compound. So it depends on how old you are and what you're investing for also. I like Bitcoin. I like crypto. Not everybody does. I do. But again, this is not financial advice. I always consult a qualified financial advisor for making any financial decisions. Marie McDevitt says, computers equals no health insurance, no workers' comp, no payroll tax, no call-ins, no drama, etc. True. Dollar said, Bernie is the only lucid one amongst who? Caricature creations. Thank you. Great Babu said, taxes equal government extortion. I would have to agree with that. Marky Man says, the Sea Country has phone factory that are totally dark, just robots working in the dark. Yeah, I've heard about those. There's some people got them in America. They're smaller, but similar idea. Stephanie Turkett, Christy, thank you for the shares. Shauna McD said exactly. Sheila G said, just about every president has made renovations to the White House. Nobody said anything. Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. Christy, congrats on the member level 10. Vince's Toy Gallery said, doesn't Trump do a lot of things Democrats have been pushing for years? Well, it depends on which Democrats, but sure. Roseanne said, that was my question. Is he just trying to piss us off so much that we do overthrow the system? No, it's not going to happen under Trump. The overthrow of the system is not going to be because of a politician. The overthrow of the system is going to be because, or not from a politician, it's going to be because of everyday people getting tired of politicians. So if anything, Donald Trump is stopping people from overthrowing the system. His election was a way of the people saying, we don't like the system, so here's what we're going to do. Instead of coming and overthrowing everybody in politics and putting all your heads on the guillotine like King Henry VIII and Marie Antoinette, instead of doing that to you, what we're going to do is we're going to elect Donald Trump. So this was a soft blow by the people to say to the government, we don't like what you're doing. We're going to elect him to show you that we don't like it. Now, the next wave of the people pushing back against the system is not going to be an election. The next wave would be anarchy, serious anarchy. So if y'all thought January 6th was anarchy, that was nothing. That was a dress rehearsal. And I don't even think January 6th was anarchy. I don't think. Because, again, Donald Trump was a politician at the time. So how much are you going to overthrow when he's the president? So how are you going to overthrow that when the guy who allegedly had you do it is already in the government? The next one, the one that I'm talking about, the type that I'm talking about is going to be everyday people who feel completely disenfranchised. They're going to want to overthrow all of it. That's the next level. So any of you hear these politicians talk about firearm control and you're okay with that, you're out of your damn mind. The reason why the government can't go too far, the reason why they couldn't go too far in 2020 during that virus is because everybody has a firearm. I don't mean everybody, but there are more firearms than there's not enough law enforcement officers to stop the amount of firearms available to everyday citizens in America. Oskin says, taxation is extortion. Is gangster-like behavior backed by organized violence? I agree. Going to the weight room said daughters too. Yeah, it would be mostly sons. I mean, this kind of anarchy I'm talking about, this would be men going to war. It's not going to be women going to war. Women will be at home hoping that the men come back. Jess Ashley said, no anarchy for me. I'll be home baking sourdough. Y'all stay safe, though. Yeah, well, it'll be the men in your community and your family that'll be gone. You hope that they come back. That's what you're going to be hoping for. Joe Byron said, freedom ain't free. This is a fact. That's correct. Saginaw Rob said, getting tired of people and the power behind politicians. Yes, that's what I mean. Jess said, do you think the government will reopen by Thanksgiving? LOL. Yes, I think the government will reopen before Halloween. That was my prediction when it first happened. I think the government shutdown will be over by Halloween. So it's 8 days away, next Friday. The Democrats don't have any power. They have no leverage. So they're going to have to capitulate. So they're trying to fight to, basically what they're trying to do is get some protections in there so that they can give health care to people who don't have documentation. They're trying to act like that's not what it is. That's what it is. That's what they're trying to get. And the Republicans said no. The Democrats said, we want this. The Republicans said no. The Democrats are going to have to cave on that. And there will not be health care available to people without documentation. That's going to be the conclusion, and it's going to reopen. So, yes, it's going to be way before Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving is like at the end of the month this year, right? Thanksgiving is like, when is Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving the 28th. So it's almost at the end of November. So, yes, we're talking, well, we're 5 weeks away from Thanksgiving. So next week, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's going to end before that. Because if it doesn't end before that, then certain benefits are going to stop going out to citizens. Certain government workers are going to stop getting their paychecks. I know some people who work in the government, and the Democrats are going to look bad for this because, yeah, they're going to have to capitulate. Long story short. Then the cat says civil war, yes, something like that, but it's not really going to be a civil war. It's not really going to be a civil war because it's not going to be two sides. It's going to be one side. It's going to be like the French Revolution. The Civil War was one side against another side. It was like 50-50. That's not what this is going to be. Iggy said, I don't see Donald Trump as a politician. Me either. But Donald Trump was technically the president when January 6th happened, is what I meant. What I'm talking about is everyday people looking at all of the politicians and getting all of them out of there, putting all of them on the guillotine. That's what I'm talking about. Donald Trump was in the presidency at that time, so it wasn't going to happen that way. Precision Installation said Minnesota is using the National Guard to keep people in their houses. Well, Minnesota is a blue state. Yes. That's the reason it worked. Name a red state where that was happening. Well, trick question. It didn't happen in any red states. And not for nothing, the COVID restrictions ended soonest in red states in America. And there's a reason for that. The red states are 2A abiding people. Blue states are with this gun control or weapon control nonsense. And that's the reason why you can send cops and National Guard and keep them in line. Can't do that in a red state. What's that country song called? Try that in a small town. Yeah, try it in a small town. They could do it in some big city where the people want to follow the rules. You can't do it in a small town. You can't name one in America where they did that. Nana Cat said Americans first. That's right. Kira Fan said, I think they're waiting until after local elections on November 4th to reopen the government. Maybe. I think it'll happen before that, though. Apple users said air traffic controllers. What about them? Marva said Republicans wants to cut from Obamacare and Medicare for those tax cuts and the border. I kind of get what you're saying there. Either way, the Republicans are going to get what they want because they have more power. That's the long story short. That's what's going to happen. The Democrats don't really have leverage. That's the problem that the Democrats have. And they know they don't have leverage. Jess said, no paychecks before the holidays will look terrible. Yes, I don't think it's going to go that far. Rick said, I'm a redneck in the South. I wish they would try and take mine. Yeah, that's what I mean. You didn't see the National Guard keeping people in their houses in any red areas. That was only in the blue areas that happened. Not even the whole state, just the areas, the blue areas, not even the whole state. I know people in Minnesota. They were not being kept in their house by the National Guard. not in any red areas, they weren't. Johnson Ott Party, thanks for the follow. Roseanne said, that's super hard for a healthcare provider to turn away a human being. Andrew Robinson said, red states are welfare states. I wouldn't even do those by state. I know a lot of people like to do it by state. It's not the states. You need to go by county. If you go county by county, every state has red and blue areas. Well, not every state, but a lot of them do. So go by county instead of state. And then it's a more fair discussion. But you can't call the whole state, this whole state is red. They have blue areas. And then there are states that are generally blue to have red areas. Mara said, Republicans take from American people by cutting Medicaid and big, beautiful bill. That's one way of looking at it. I don't know it depends on if you see that as something that is a birthright of yours to be getting that medical from the government. There's a big argument about that. Nana said, in Texas and Oklahoma, I never wore a mask, found any of the stupid arrows in the stores. Yeah, because in those areas there was no National Guard coming in to make you do it. The cops didn't even agree with it, so they weren't trying to enforce it. Marvel said blue states bailout red states depend on Medicaid and the government system. As I just said, if you go by areas and not states, then there's a whole different thing. And also, every side, both sides depend on the other side because the blue states don't bail out the red states. Again, it can be framed that way, but that's not a fair frame if you're trying to have a logical and factual discussion, because the red areas house things such as farms, for example, as one example, that feed and provide to the blue areas. Take all the farms away from the red areas, then you have no fruits, you have no vegetables, you have no produce in the blue areas. So any of you who lives in the city, if you're like myself, you live in New York, LA, Chicago, Philadelphia, Houston, Jacksonville, Miami, Detroit, you're not eating any apples, oranges, or meat if you take away the red area. So if we're making this, well, here's what we do. We're going to take away all our stuff and you take away all your stuff. Well, people in the blue areas you're going to go hungry because there ain't no food. You're going to be eating Snickers bars. So let's not make it a blue does this and red does this. That's not true. Both sides help the other side. One hand washes the other. You can't wash your hands if you only got one hand. So I get what you're saying, but it's not a fair argument. Robin Zad said, as long as they keep us divided, anarchy won't happen. What is the catalyst to bring together? Catalyst to bring together is going to be shared struggle. That's what it's going to be, because there's going to be no middle class. That's what's going to happen. Just said, am I a libertarian? I have no political, I don't connect myself politically to any group. So I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a libertarian. I'm none of those things. I'm just a person who looks at the landscape and just tells you what I see. But I have some friends who are libertarians down here in Miami, and they say that I am a libertarian, but I don't follow the libertarians enough to know if I would connect with them. The answer, probably not. If you just ask me, would I think I'm part of their group? I say probably not. Rick, thanks for the follow. Roseanne said they're trying to take our farms away, control the food system, control everything. I get it. Wag said, you sound very articulate, intelligent, and unbiased. It's very refreshing. Well, thank you. All right, we're right at 10 o'clock, folks. We're past 10 o'clock. I usually do these from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. So if you like this one, come back tomorrow. 8 a.m. is when I do these live streams. 8 a.m. Eastern, that is. You want to get one of my books? I'll give you this book for free. It's called The Mirror of Motivation, the Self-Guide, Self-Discipline. The book is all about how you can be who you need to be, how to be who you need to be so you can do what you need to do, have what you want to have. That's why we call it The Mirror of Motivation. So it's not about me telling you what type of person to be, which would make no sense because I'm not you. It's me giving you the frame for you to tell you what type of person to be. So then you do what you need to do and have what you want to have. I'll give you the book free. Just cover the shipping. Go to mirrorofmotivation.com. Again, mirrorofmotivation.com. The book is free. Just cover the shipping. Or you can just send a text to the number in my profile. My phone number is in there. My text number is in there. Text the word mirror, like Mirror of Motivation. Text the word mirror and we'll send you a link to that book. And what else? Power Presence Protocol. I told y'all what I do. My main business, for those of you who don't know, you've been listening here. My main business is not talking about politics. My main business is the Power Presence Protocol. That is helping you make sales before you actually make your pitch. Close a deal before you even give them a number. Get cooperation and buy-in from people before you even open your mouth. That's all about the 85% of communication that is nonverbal. This controls everything. The unspoken conversation controls everything else you're trying to do. You're trying to get a date. You're trying to get a job. You're trying to make a sale. You're trying to close a deal. You're trying to win friends. You're trying to influence people. You want people to see you as confident and go along with you. Most of what makes people make decisions about you is unconscious and unspoken. It is not what you say. It's not even what you do. It's how you say it and how you do it, and the energetic signals people pick up about you before you open your mouth. That is called presence. We teach the Power Presence Protocol to show you how to master this. I have a Power Presence Challenge starting on November 10th. That is a Monday, 2 Mondays from now. You can get into that challenge by registering by going to powerpresenceprotocol.com/challenge, or just go to the link in my profile. It'll take you right there. That's where you can get registered. We also have a mastermind for those of you who want to take it further, because that challenge is going to activate this and help you understand it. The mastermind is where we ingrain this and I teach it to you directly. You want to get into my mastermind? Go to that same link that I just gave you. There'll be a link there for the mastermind. You can learn about that. You can schedule a time to talk about that and get into the mastermind. That is what we are focused on right here. So those of you want to know what I do for a living, it's that. It is not this. This I just like talking about. But what I do for a living is that, or my main business. Let's just say that. This is something that I do, but my main business is the Power Presence protocol. My company is called Work on Your Game. All that said, someone said like NLP. No, not quite NLP. NLP, there are probably NLP elements and everything, but no, it's not like NLP. Andrew Robinson, thank you. Everybody have a great Thursday. I will see you all tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern. Topic always to be determined. I usually pick the topic the day of. So I'm about to have some lunch and get some work done here today. Everybody have a great Thursday. I'll see you all tomorrow morning. Thank you to the regulars. Thank you to the moderators. Thanks to the new people. Thanks for everybody liking. We got 165,000 likes today. Appreciate everybody. Make sure you go to mirrorofmotivation.com. I'll give you this book free. This is where you can get started. Those of you not ready to go any further, mirrorofmotivation.com. The book's free. Just cover the shipping. Mirrorofmotivation.com, or just text the word mirror to the number in my profile. Text the word power. You want to get the link to the Power Presence Protocol. Everybody have a great Thursday. Be out of here. Work on your game.